On June 8, 793 AD, Norse longships appeared off the coast of Lindisfarne, a small island monastery off the northeast coast of England, home to some of the most sacred Christian manuscripts and relics in Britain. The monks had no warning and no defenses. The Norsemen killed some of the monks, threw others into the sea, enslaved the rest, and stripped the monastery of its treasures. A Northumbrian scholar named Alcuin, then at Charlemagne's court, wrote in horror, "Never before has such terror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered from a pagan race." The Viking Age had begun, and the Christian world would never look at the sea the same way again. The word Viking originally referred specifically to those Norse people who went on raids, from the Old Norse Vikinger, possibly meaning pirate or one who lurks in inlets. Most Scandinavians were farmers, craftsmen, and traders who never raided anything. But the raiders, driven by a combination of population pressure, primogeniture laws that left younger sons without inheritance, superior ship technology, and sheer opportunity, exploded out of Scandinavia in the late 8th century and reached virtually every corner of the known world. Their targets weren't random, they struck monasteries and undefended coastal settlements first because those held the most wealth and offered the least resistance. The Viking longship was one of history's great technological achievements. Clinker-built, with overlapping planks that made the hull flexible rather than rigid, the longships could survive open ocean swells that would destroy other vessels. With both sail and oars, they could travel at speeds of up to 15 knots. Critically, their shallow draft, perhaps 3 feet of hull below the waterline, allowed them to travel up rivers that larger vessels couldn't navigate. This meant no inland settlement was safe. Vikings raided up the Seine to Paris, up the Thames to London, up the Loire, the Rhine, and deep into Russia along the Volga and Dnieper river systems. The very name Russia may derive from Rus, the Norse term for these eastern river traders. The Viking world was far more sophisticated than the image of savage raiders suggests. Norse society had elaborate legal codes, the things, outdoor assemblies where freemen met to settle disputes, pass laws, and make decisions. Norse literature, preserved in the Icelandic sagas, represents some of the finest medieval literature in any European language, complex psychological portraits of families, feuds, and fate, told with a dry irony that feels remarkably modern. Norse religion was equally sophisticated. Odin, the Allfather, had sacrificed his eye for wisdom and hung himself on the world tree to learn the runes of power. The Norse cosmos was cyclical, destined to end in Ragnarok, a mythological framework as philosophically rich as any Greek or Roman equivalent. The Vikings didn't just raid, they built. They founded Dublin in Ireland, establishing the city that would become one of medieval Europe's major trading centers. They settled Iceland in the 870s, the Faroe Islands, and eventually Greenland under Eric the Red around 985 AD. Around 1000 AD, Eric's son Leif Erikson led an expedition to a place he called Vinland, Wineland, now identified with the Norse settlement at L'Anse-aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. The Norse reached North America nearly 5 centuries before Christopher Columbus. The evidence is not just in the sagas but in the ground. Archaeologists excavated the Newfoundland settlement in the 1960s, finding Norse artifacts and structures that matched the sagas precisely. The Viking Age ended not with a dramatic defeat but with a gradual transformation. As Scandinavian kingdoms consolidated under powerful Christian kings, the social conditions that had produced raiding diminished. Norse settlers in England, Ireland, France, and Russia converted to Christianity and assimilated into local cultures, contributing their genes, place names, and legal traditions to the populations they had once terrorized. The Norman conquest of England in 1066, which fundamentally transformed the English language, law, and culture, was itself the work of Northmen, who had settled in France 2 generations earlier and adopted French customs while retaining their Norse warrior traditions. The last great Viking expedition was the Norman conquest. After that, the Vikings became everyone else.